Tessa Rowan was explaining why Julian Cross should be legally required to warn people before entering a public building when the Alpha King stopped breathing. He has the kind of face that causes administrative delays, she said, tapping the actor's poster with her pencil. Someone sees that jaw, forgets what form they came for, and suddenly I have to explain Box 7 3 times. Her friend Mira glanced at the painted man in the velvet coat. You've explained Box 7 3 times today without him being here. Then imagine the damage if he were. The Royal Bond Registry was already overflowing. Newly matched couples crowded the marble hall. Noble families argued over witness seals, and exhausted clerks tried to keep two young alphas from signing the same line. Ink stained Tessa's thumb. A pencil held back the loose chestnut strands escaping her braid, and her plain dark blue dress marked her as a low-ranking examiner rather than anyone important enough to delay a noble. Then the room went silent. Tessa looked up. Alpha King Kael Blackthorne stood beneath the registry arch in a black royal coat, 3 guards behind him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, with a narrow scar at his temple and silver eyes fixed on her with unsettling intensity. Inside him, Varric struck against years of discipline. Mate. Kael's lungs locked. Hours. Why is she smiling at another male? Kael had faced rebellions without flinching. None of them had prepared him for finding his fated mate holding a pencil beside Julian Cross's face. When he continued staring, Tessa lifted one brow. Your Majesty, if you swallowed silver, the infirmary is 2 corridors east. One guard made a strangled sound. Kael forced himself to breathe. Who is that man? Julian Cross. What does he do? He stands at unreasonable angles and speaks dramatically. Tessa glanced at the poster. He is an actor. You find him attractive. The entire registry seemed to hear the accusation. I find his face highly disruptive to public administration. Before Kael could decide whether that answer helped, the main doors opened again. The man from the poster walked in. Julian Cross wore a dark red coat and carried a silver document case. Several women whispered. Julian smiled automatically, then lost the expression as he approached Tessa's desk. I need an examiner. You have one until someone decides appreciation of facial symmetry is illegal. Kael's gaze narrowed. Julian opened the case. Inside lay a moon certificate sealed in living silver ink. The names across the top read Julian Cross and Lady Celeste Harrow. Beneath them, a complete mate seal glowed with the steady light of an accepted bond. I have never met her, Julian said. I did not sign this. Tessa touched the document. Moon ink usually answered contact with warmth or an emotional pulse. She felt neither. She never did. But silence did not mean blindness. Beneath the silver glow, a black thread cut through the seal. The document contained scent, signatures, witnesses, and power, yet there was nothing where the memory of choice should have been. I can't certify this, Tessa said. A woman's voice crossed the hall. You will. Lady Celeste Harrow entered beside her father, Alpha Darius Harrow. She wore white and silver, with a ceremonial veil pinned over her blonde hair. My daughter's certificate was delivered by the Royal Registry, Darius said. This actor is attempting to reject a lawful bond. I am attempting to reject a stranger, Julian replied. The certificate requires review, Tessa said. By someone qualified, Celeste answered. High Registrar Silas Wren descended from the upper gallery with 2 senior clerks. His silver hair and gentle manner had once made Tessa trust him. He had trained her and taught her that careful people could survive powerful institutions. He looked at the document, then at Kael's fixed attention on Tessa. An integrity review will begin immediately, he announced. Tessa's stomach tightened. For the certificate? For you. A clerk brought her sealed medical history before she could object. Tessa Rowan was diagnosed bond-null in childhood. Silas read aloud. She has never demonstrated mate recognition, emotional echo, scent response, or wolf resonance. Whispers spread through the hall. That file is private, Tessa said. She is also an unranked Omega without formal pack protection, Silas continued. Her condition raises questions about her ability to evaluate living bond magic. I evaluate legal integrity, not romantic enthusiasm. Celeste looked over Tessa's plain dress and ink-stained fingers. An empty Omega pretending to judge bonds she will never understand. No one challenged her. Silas turned another page. There is also a conflict of interest. His Majesty's visible reaction to Examiner Rowan compromises the independence of her judgment. Every face turned toward Kael, then back to Tessa. The humiliation changed shape. She was no longer merely defective. Now she was a low Omega, using the king's attention to overrule a noble bond. Silas reached for the silver witness seal around her wrist. You have no evidence of misconduct, Tessa said. I have sufficient grounds for suspension. He removed the seal before the entire registry. Your Moon Ledger access is revoked. Surrender your keys. Every certificate you approved this year will be reviewed. Leave the examiner's station. Tessa placed her keys on the counter. Her fingers trembled once. Then the marble beneath Kael's boots cracked. Alpha pressure flooded the hall. Nobles bent instinctively. Clerks gripped their desks. No one in this hall touches her, Kael said. She is under the protection of the crown. The declaration stopped the humiliation. It also destroyed what remained of Tessa's independence. Suspicion became certainty around her. The king had claimed an interest. Silas's accusation now looked like exposure. Tessa turned on Kael. You have made this worse. You were being stripped of rank, and now they think I never earned it. Before he could answer, Julian leaned close enough for only Tessa and Kael to hear. The woman who gave me the certificate said only a null witness would be able to see the lie. Tessa went cold. That title did not appear in her public record. Kael heard Varric stop snarling. Danger, the wolf said. In Tessa's hands, the black thread shifted. It did not choose her as Julian's mate. It reached toward her like a severed vein searching for the body it had been cut from. Deep beneath the registry, behind a veil no ordinary clerk could see, a dormant royal document opened its first line of light. The registry did not recover its noise after Tessa's suspension. It changed from silence into whispers. The king found his mate. The bond-null clerk manipulated him. The actor brought a false certificate. The Omega had been dismissed for fraud. Tessa crossed the marble hall with her shoulders straight. Though Silas had taken her witness seal and the pale ring around her wrist looked like missing skin. Private room, she told Kael. Captain Rowan stepped forward. His Majesty has... I was not speaking to you. Kael dismissed the guards and followed her into a records chamber. The moment the door closed, Tessa turned on him. You announced crown protection over me in front of half the capital. You were being publicly stripped of rank. And now everyone believes I held that rank because you wanted me. I did not know you existed before today. That will comfort the gossip. Kael's jaw tightened. Varric pressed against his control, furious at her anger, and more furious that it was justified. Tessa folded her arms. Tell me why you stared at me as if the room disappeared. You are my fated mate. Nothing changed in her face. No recognition. No answering pull. That is inconvenient, she said. For whom? You. Kael took one step closer. You feel nothing. I told you. Bond. Null. No mate pull. No scent recognition. No emotional echo. No wolf resonance. When people describe the bond as warmth or a second heartbeat, I hear symptoms I have never experienced. Her voice remained steady until the final sentence. My mother spent 9 years trying to repair me. Physicians took blood, scent samples, sleep records, fear responses. When nothing worked, she decided a girl who could not feel a bond could not love anyone. Varric recoiled inside Kael. Tessa, do not turn me into another problem powerful people believe they have the right to solve. I will not have you altered. That is not the same as respecting me. Glass shattered beyond the chamber. Kael opened the door as a masked figure crossed the hall toward Tessa, blade low, one hand reaching for Julian's certificate. The attacker smelled of iron, smoke, and registry sealing wax. Kael struck him into a desk. Papers burst into the air. The man rolled, cut Tessa's palm when she protected the certificate, then vanished through a service passage behind the archives. Kael saw the blood. Varric surged. Bones threatened to shift beneath his skin. Do not, Tessa warned. He forced the wolf back, but not the decision already forming. Captain, Rowan entered with guards. Seal the registry. Search every internal passage. Tessa Rowan is placed under royal protective hold. Tessa went still. No. The attacker knew the corridors and wanted this document. Until I know who sent him, you are coming to the palace. I am going home. You are a direct target. That does not make me crown property. No. His voice lowered. It makes your freedom a risk I will not take. The words landed harder than the attack. If you force me into that carriage, understand exactly what you are doing. Kael did. He ordered it anyway. The palace room prepared for her was larger than Tessa's apartment. It had velvet curtains, a carved bed, and 2 guards outside the door. The windows overlooked an enclosed courtyard, watched from 3 towers. A beautiful prison, she said. A temporary protection order. Prisons often have official names. You were attacked inside the registry, and now I am confined by the most powerful man in it. Kael's hands curled. You can hate me alive. For one dangerous moment, Tessa understood that he was not pretending to be harmless. If he believed her life was threatened, he would become the threat standing closest to her. She hated that part of her noticed how fiercely he watched the cut on her palm. Then I have conditions, she said. I remain part of the investigation. No physician touches me, no blood or scent samples, no royal claim. You do not enter this room without permission. Julian keeps access to the evidence. I may send copies to an independent legal witness. Agreed. You are still holding me here. Yes. Then do not mistake cooperation for forgiveness. I will not. A moon scholar arrived before midnight with the first analysis of Julian's certificate. Beneath a blue examination lamp, he exposed a buried scent code. Tessa recognized the number. It belonged to her childhood medical file. The scholar's face lost color. This is not a magical imitation. Whoever created the certificate used a preserved biological sample. Kael looked toward the distant registry. Tessa looked at the bare wrist where her witness seal had been removed. The black thread inside Julian's certificate pulsed once beneath the lamp, as though it had recognized the code and was waiting for something larger to answer. Somewhere inside the institution that had destroyed her reputation, a piece of her body had been waiting for years. The palace gave Tessa a room with carved shelves, a locked cabinet, and 1 narrow window overlooking the eastern wall. It was meant to feel like an office. The 2 guards outside made the illusion difficult. By the second morning, she had reorganized the borrowed files and discovered that the palace used 6 versions of the same marriage declaration. Kael appeared before noon carrying a folder and the expression of a man expecting resistance. You are early, Tessa said. I am the king. That is not a time. Varric approved that she had noticed his arrival. Kael ignored him and placed the folder on her desk. The first review of Julian's certificate is complete. Tessa reached for it. Kael kept one hand on the folder. Dinner first. She looked at his hand. then at him. Are you withholding evidence until I eat with you? I am ensuring you eat. That sounds worse. It is a negotiation with food. Tessa glanced toward the guards. A negotiation usually allows both parties to leave. Kael's jaw tightened, but he released the folder. Then, call it an argument with soup. The dining room he chose was small by palace standards, which meant it contained one chandelier, 12 chairs, and enough silver to finance a village. Tessa sat at the far end until Kael moved closer, not beside her, but near enough that she could see the fatigue beneath his eyes. He dismissed the servants after the first course. You do not trust them? She asked. I do not trust anyone who can carry poison in a soup bowl. You live an exhausting life. So do you. I did not until you entered my registry. The words landed cleanly. Kael did not defend himself. For several minutes they ate in silence. Tessa expected him to speak about fate or duty. Instead, he asked how many applications the registry processed, why low-ranking Omegas waited longer for hearings, and how often false claims were appealed. The questions were not clever, but they were serious. Tessa opened the folder. Inside was a copy of the Crown Mate Priority Act. Kael's signature marked the final page. This law is why Lady Celeste's family expected Julian's certificate to be enforced immediately, she said. It was written to prevent the Red Veil conflict. I know what it was written for. I am telling you what it does. She pointed to the final appendix. A moon seal witnessed by both Crown and Registry could override family objections and suspend individual appeals until after ceremonial confirmation. Kael read the clause twice. You had not seen that before, Tessa said. I saw the summary. You signed the full act. My advisors said the appendix contained procedural language. A signature does not become wise because it belongs to a king. Varric bristled. Kael felt something stranger. Respect. The act stopped 2 packs from going to war, he said. How many people became the price of that peace? He had no answer. A knock came at the door. Julian entered under guard in the same dark red coat. Am I interrupting a royal kidnapping? Yes, Tessa said. No, Kael said at the same time. Julian sat without invitation. Before the certificate appeared, I signed a delivery receipt for a theater trunk. A woman in a gray veil held the paper. She said the seal needed a willing hand. Tessa looked up. Exact words? Julian repeated them, then added, She said a bond does not need truth if the seal believes it. Tessa's fingers stilled. Silas had once taught her the opposite. A seal without truth was only an elegant lie. She pulled Julian's delivery record from the evidence packet. His signature looked ordinary, but faint silver residue clung to the pressure marks. Moon ink does not only copy handwriting, she said. It can preserve the emotional imprint of a voluntary signature. Kael's gaze sharpened. Consent. Consent echo, Tessa corrected. Real willingness attached to the wrong document. Julian went pale. So I volunteered to receive a trunk, and someone used that willingness to make it look as if I volunteered for a mate. That is what I think. They returned to the borrowed office before midnight. Tessa used Kael's authorization to open the access history of her childhood medical file. 6 recent entries appeared. Scent records, treatment forms, archived signatures, all approved by High Registrar Silas Wren. Tessa copied the first line. The screen flashed. Every entry vanished. Kael stepped closer. Can that happen accidentally? No. A final code remained for less than a second before the ledger went dark. Anchor classification. Royal. Convergence audit initiated. Tessa wrote it from memory. When did the audit begin? Kael asked. She checked the timestamp. the exact minute he had entered the registry and recognized her. 3 days after the convergence audit appeared in the ledger, Julian sent word that the woman in the gray veil might return during his final performance at the Royal Crescent Theater. Tessa carried the message to Kael's council chamber. "I'm going." "No." "You answered before I explained the plan. You said theater. That is not an argument. It is where Julian received the document later used to forge his bond. That is all we know." Kael rose. "You are still under protective hold. It expires at sunset. I can extend it." The threat settled between them. Tessa understood exactly what he was offering. Accept his presence or remain confined by royal order. "You could," she said. Varric urged him to do it. "Lock the doors, double the guards. Keep her where no stranger could reach her." Kael forced his hands to remain still. "I accompany you, and I do not extend the hold." That is coercion with better tailoring. It is the condition. Tessa hated him for making the choice real. After a long pause, she nodded. The Royal Crescent was crowded before moonrise. Tessa wore a dark green dress from the palace wardrobe. Kael forgot the first thing Captain Rowan said when she entered the carriage. Varric noticed. "Beautiful." Kael did not answer. Julian met them near the backstage entrance in a black coat embroidered with silver thread. He lifted Tessa's hand toward his lips. Kael stepped between them. Julian looked at the chest blocking his path. "Your Majesty, your hand is required for the performance." "I have two." Tessa reclaimed her hand. "The shoulders are uneven," Kael said. "They are not. The sword belt is impractical. It is a play." Julian smiled. "Are you criticizing my weapon or my proximity to Miss Rowan?" Kael looked at him. "Both." Tessa nearly laughed, then remembered the bargain that had brought her there. During the second act, a woman in a gray veil entered the lower corridor and slipped through a backstage door. "Tessa Rose." Kael caught her wrist. "I saw her," she whispered. "You stay beside me." "No. She may be armed." Captain Rowan is already following her. Julian appeared at the balcony entrance before Kael could answer. The prop master found something under the sword chest. Tessa pulled free and followed him backstage. The sword chest stood open beneath a hanging curtain. A stagehand had removed the false bottom, revealing a silver-black seal carved into the wood. 3 lines of moon ink curved toward a hollow circle. A small number marked the edge. "Branch 12." Tessa murmured. Kael crouched beside her. "What does that mean?" "I don't know yet." Julian touched the wood. The seal brightened. A thin silver thread rose from his skin and vanished into the carved lines. Tessa seized his wrist. "Move your hand." The thread snapped. "It took something," Julian said. "Something tied to your scent," Tessa answered. "Enough to identify you. Perhaps more." A flare of orange light burst behind the curtain. Someone had ignited the storage ropes. The veiled woman ran toward the rear exit. Captain Rowan pursued her, but burning fabric collapsed between them. Smoke flooded the corridor. Tessa drove a knife beneath the seal. "If I remove part of it, we can prove where it was made." A support beam cracked above her. "Tessa, move." "I almost have it." The beam shifted. Fire raced along the painted scenery. Varric surged with one command. "Stay." The alpha voice struck her body. Tessa froze. Her fingers remained locked around the knife. Her mind was clear, but every muscle obeyed Kael instead of her. Kael crossed the distance, tore her from the chest, and covered her as the beam crashed through the floor. Julian dragged the stagehand toward the exit, while Rowan returned through the smoke. Kael carried Tessa into the alley. The moment the danger passed, he released the command. Her body became hers again. She slapped him. The sound silenced the guards. Kael did not move. "You controlled my body." The beam would have killed you. You could have pulled me away. There was no time. There was time to decide. My will did not matter. Varric recoiled, but Kael did not retreat from the truth. I put your survival above the consent I owed you. Tessa's fury cooled into something harder. That is how cages ask to be thanked. She stepped away. Kael's hand moved toward her, then stopped before touching her sleeve. Captain Rowan emerged, carrying a scorched piece of moon metal. The woman escaped. This broke loose when the floor collapsed. Tessa accepted the fragment from Rowan, not Kael. One side carried the branch number. The other bore an old, dark red wax impression. Kael recognized the royal crest. Queen Regent Evelyn's seal. She died 9 years ago, Rowan said. Tessa wiped away the soot. 3 narrow lines surrounded the blood wax mark and pointed toward an empty center. This is not a complete document, she said. It was made to connect to something else. No one yet knew what that larger thing was. Kael watched Tessa wrap the evidence without looking at him. The fire had destroyed the hidden seal, but not the distance his command had placed between them. When they returned to the palace, Tessa walked beside Captain Rowan. Kael followed several steps behind and did not try to close the space. Tessa did not speak to Kael during the carriage ride back to the palace. She sat beside Captain Rowan with the scorched moon metal wrapped in cloth on her lap. Kael remained opposite her, close enough to see the faint red mark his command had left around her wrist and far enough to understand that she did not want him near it. When the carriage stopped, he moved aside before she could ask. Tessa noticed. It did not repair anything. The next morning, she refused a private meeting. The review of the forged certificates took place in a legal chamber with Julian, 2 independent clerks, and representatives from the affected pacts present. Kael sat at the end of the long table without a crown. Tessa had requested that. 3 women gave evidence in the same session. Ellen Voss had lost custody of her son after refusing to move into the household of the Alpha named on her seal. Another woman had watched her inherited farmland transfer to a man she had met twice. The third spoke from behind a privacy screen because the Alpha she had been ordered to return to had broken her jaw during their first year of marriage. Each forged certificate had been protected by the same law, crown mate priority, Kael's law. The woman behind the screen said, "Your law gave him the right to call my fear destiny." Kael did not look away. He could have challenged the clerk, defended the act, or reminded the room that it had stopped a border war. Instead, he said, "Continue." Tessa watched him carefully. The instinct that had made him command her body still lived in the tension of his shoulders. But this time, he did not let that instinct decide what the room could say. After the testimony, Tessa laid the recovered forged certificates across the table. Julian's document belonged at the top. 11 others had come from sealed appeals. Their black markings became clearer together. Each certificate contained 3 thin lines curving toward an incomplete circle. An independent clerk leaned closer. "These are branch seals." "Branches of what?" Julian asked. "Something larger," the clerk said. "Each one reports toward a central document." Tessa looked from Julian's certificate to the 11 recovered appeals. 12 certificates, she said slowly. 12 branches. Her gaze moved to the empty curve repeated on every seal. The writ with my name and Kael's name is the center, and whatever this master control sigil is, it must be the switch. No one argued. The room had gone too quiet for argument. Silas Wren found Tessa alone outside the chamber. He stood beside a tall window, hands folded behind his back, every inch the patient teacher she remembered. "You look tired," he said. "I lost my position, was attacked, imprisoned by royal order, and commanded out of my own body." "Tired seems reasonable." Silas's expression softened. "Kael Blackthorne is dangerous." The statement was too easy to agree with. "He saved my life," Tessa said, and used your survival to excuse control. She said nothing. Silas stepped closer. He announced you as Crown-protected property. He confined you. He answered for you. Then he discovered that one word could make your body obey him. He has not used it again. Not yet. The phrase settled beneath her ribs. Silas did not need to lie. That was what made him effective. Give me the branch evidence, he said. I can restore your witness seal and investigate this without the Crown shaping every conclusion. You suspended me to keep the council from arresting you for falsifying a noble certificate. You read my medical file aloud. Regret appeared on his face with practiced precision. I chose the humiliation I could control over the punishment I could not. Tessa heard the same excuse in different clothes. She stepped away. I am finished being protected by men who make my choices for me. By sunset, the royal protective hold expired. Kael met her at the palace doors. A prepared extension order rested unsigned in his hand. Varric pressed against him, frantic at the sight of her packed case. Keep her. Kael tore the extension in half. You may leave. Tessa waited for a condition. He gave none. This does not forgive the theater, she said. I understand. You do not get credit for ending an imprisonment that should not have begun. You are right. She walked past him. Kael did not follow. That night, Tessa returned to the registry to collect her personal papers. Her desk had been cleared, her nameplate removed, and her witness seal remained locked inside Silas's office. As she opened the bottom drawer, the Crown Moon ledger activated in the central hall. Silver pages turned beneath the glass. The 12 forged certificates in the evidence cabinet began to glow. Their branch lines pulsed one after another until the last seal answered. Beneath the Crown Moon ledger, a hidden layer of moon ink surfaced. A veil-shaped mark dissolved from the page as though someone had released it from somewhere else. An ancient document unfolded under the glass. The heading read, Dormant Royal Betrothal Writ. The first name appeared, Alpha King Kael Blackthorne. Then the second, Tessa Rowan. The date beneath them was 12 years old. Tessa had been 12. At the bottom, the ledger burned with a new status. Royal Master Anchor. Status. Awakened. 12 branches connected. Command authority incomplete. Master control sigil required. Kael entered behind her, summoned by the alarm. The writ brightened when he came near, but its status did not change. It had already recognized him. Tessa stared at the words beneath the glass. 12 certificates were the branches. The writ was the center. The sigil was the switch. Someone had not merely forged a bond between them. Someone had built a system around it. The Royal Master Anchor remained visible beneath the Crown Moon ledger until dawn. Tessa did not leave. Neither did Kael. The registry had been sealed around them, but Silas was gone. His office was empty, his private records removed, and the lower archive doors stood open as though he wanted them to follow the trail. Tessa studied the dormant royal betrothal writ through the glass. Her name had been written in the uneven hand she used as a child. That is my signature, she said. Kael stood several feet behind her. Since the theater, he had stopped approaching without warning. You remember signing it? No, I remember signing medical forms. A treatment number glowed beneath her name. Tessa recognized it. She searched the lower archive until she found a thin folder labeled as a routine bond reception examination. The final page contained a consent statement written in Silas's careful hand. The signature line had been cut away. Tessa placed the damaged page beside the copy of the writ. The missing corner matched the ragged edge around her childhood signature. Kael understood first. He did not forge your willingness. He moved it. A faint silver residue clung to the torn fibers. Consent echo did not belong to handwriting alone. It carried the emotional certainty present when the name was written. At 12, Tessa had believed she was agreeing to a harmless examination. Silas had attached that trust to a royal betrothal. "The moon ink believes I chose this," she said. Kael's expression hardened. "You were a child." The law recorded willingness. It did not ask what I thought I was choosing. The proof no longer arrived as theory. It arrived as objects. A childhood consent form with the signature cut away. A royal blood-wax seal that should have been destroyed. Kael's scent vial resealed with that same dead regent's wax. A missing measure of royal scent. Tessa placed the evidence in a line and saw the shape of the crime. Silas had not forged everything from nothing. He had used real pieces in the wrong places. Her childhood willingness. Kael's royal scent. A dead regent's witness seal. His own authority as High Registrar. That was why Moon Inc. had believed the lie. It had been fed enough truth. Tessa returned to her childhood file and found a sealed letter hidden beneath the inner lining. Her mother's handwriting covered 6 pages. The letter began as an apology. Her mother had trusted Silas when he promised that studying Tessa's bond-null condition might lead to treatment. She had allowed physicians to collect blood, hair, and scent gland samples. Months later, she discovered Silas had preserved the samples after the study ended. She tried to withdraw permission. Silas threatened to classify Tessa as a dangerous null anomaly and remove her into permanent crown observation. Her mother had fled to draw attention away from her. She promised to return when it was safe. There were no later letters. Tessa read the final page twice before her knees gave way. She sat on the archive floor with the letter clutched in one hand. Kael stopped at the end of the aisle. He did not order the guards away. He did not promise to find her mother. He did not tell her what the letter should mean. He lowered himself to the floor several feet from her. "She still left," Tessa said. "Yes. She may have loved me and still left me. Yes. I spent years believing she looked at me and saw something empty." Kael rested his forearms on his knees. "Knowing why someone hurt you does not make the hurt smaller." Tessa looked at him. "How do I know anything you feel belongs to you?" Kael could have spoken about fate. Instead, he said, "You cannot." The answer hurt because it was honest. "The wolf knew you in one breath," he said. "The man is still trying to become someone you would choose. And if the bond vanished, I would still remember you challenging my laws. I would still know how you hold your breath before saying something cruel but accurate. I would still hate Julian Cross's shoulders." A broken laugh escaped her. Kael's expression softened, but he did not move closer. "After my father died, the crown connected me to thousands of wolves," he said. "I could feel fear, anger, hunger, and obedience. No one asked whether I was afraid. They assumed power replaced the need to be human. Were you?" "Yes." Tessa placed her hand on the floor between them. Kael stared at it before covering it with his own. The bond answered inside him with painful warmth. Tessa felt only his fingers. They were enough. "May I hold you?" he asked. The question mattered because he could have crossed the distance without it. Tessa nodded. Kael moved slowly. When his arms closed around her, he did not pull her with alpha strength. He held her as though restraint was a choice he had to keep making. Tessa rested her forehead against his chest. His heart beat too fast. "Your wolf is dramatic," she whispered. "He believes breathing is optional when you touch me. That seems medically unwise." For one quiet moment, there was no crown, no command, no registry law, and no forged moon ink. Only his warmth, her hand gripping his coat, and the knowledge that she had chosen the distance between them. When Tessa pulled away, Kael released her immediately. They returned to the writ with the evidence spread across the table. a stolen signature, a stolen royal scent, a dead regent's blood wax, preserved null samples, 12 branch seals curving toward one hidden center. Kael is the royal source, Tessa said. My scent keeps the false seals stable. This writ is the center they report to. A master anchor, Rowan said. Tessa nodded. It is awake, but it cannot command them yet. Then a theater messenger arrived, carrying a page from Julian's newest script. One sentence had been circled in red. When the anchor wakes, every chain remembers its master. Beneath it, Julian had drawn a map of the tunnels below the registry. Across the bottom, in hurried ink, he had written one final warning. Silas knows we found the writ. There was blood on the corner of the page. Kael wanted the royal guard inside the registry before the blood on Julian's message had dried. Tessa saw the order forming in his face. No, she said. Kael turned from the map. Julian is bleeding somewhere beneath that building. And if you send guards through the front hall, Silas will destroy every sample, burn the writ, and kill him before you reach the first staircase. Varric slammed against Kael's control. The wolf did not care about evidence. It cared that Tessa was preparing to walk into the same darkness that had taken Julian. Kael's voice dropped. You are not going alone. Not alone, she said. Not helpless. Not yours to stop. The answer stopped him. Tessa spread the map across the archive table. Julian's lines marked a service tunnel beneath the East Records wing, an old courier passage, and a chamber labeled with a crescent symbol. Silas expects force, she said. He does not expect clerks. Captain Rowan looked offended. Clerks? 2 guards in plain coats. 1 legal witness above ground with copied evidence. Julian's theater company creates a distraction outside the west gate. Kael waits outside the lower door until I signal. Kael stared at her. You expect me to wait while you enter Silas's laboratory? No. I expect you to ask me what I need instead of deciding what fear entitles you to take. The words struck the place his command had left raw. Kael looked at the fading mark on her wrist. Then he folded his hands behind his back, as if holding himself there required discipline. What do you need? Tessa breathed once. A knife small enough for my sleeve. Rowan behind me, not in front of me. A sealed copy of the writ sent to neutral court if I do not return. And you outside the lower door, waiting for my signal. Varric snarled. Kael said, done. The tunnel beneath the registry smelled of wet stone, old paper, and moonlit dust. Tessa carried a lantern shielded in blue glass. Rowan followed with a plain coat over his armor. Halfway down, Tessa saw the first black line. It ran along the wall like ink beneath skin. Rowan could not see it. She followed it to an iron door marked with the same hollow circle symbol carved into the theater seal. Tessa pressed the moon metal fragment against the lock. The branch lines answered, and the door opened with a sound like breath through teeth. Julian was strapped to a wooden chair in the chamber's center. He was alive. His red coat had been torn at the sleeve. A glass tube drew silver vapor from a shallow cut near his wrist into a crystal vial. Very poor hospitality, Julian said weakly. No applause, no wine, terrible lighting. Tessa crossed to him and cut the tube first. Save the review. Rows of shelves filled the chamber. Each held sealed vials marked with names, pack numbers, and scent codes. Some belonged to alpha bloodlines. Others belonged to omegas. Several labels had the same prefix as Tessa's childhood file. On the far wall hung a diagram. 12 branch certificates curved toward a central writ. One note identified Kael as the royal source. Another identified Tessa as the null anchor. Beneath the diagram rested a dark moon metal piece shaped like 3 claws gripping a circle. The master control sigil. Silas stepped from behind the shelves. I wondered how long it would take you to stop waiting for powerful men to open doors. Rowan raised his blade. Silas looked at him calmly. Kill me, and the failsafe burns every living sample here. Tessa kept her knife against Julian's bindings. You built the anchor around me. Silas followed her gaze to the diagram on the wall. You have already understood most of it, he said. The 12 certificates are branches. The royal writ is the center. This sigil is the switch. He touched the dark moonmetal piece resting beneath the diagram. The king provides the force. You make the lie stable. Tessa's stomach turned. I am not your anchor. No, Silas said softly. You are the reason the anchor works. Tessa cut Julian free. He slumped forward and Rowan caught him. Silas's gaze shifted toward the tunnel. Is Kael waiting outside? How disciplined. You have improved him. Tessa's grip tightened. Silas smiled. But do you wonder what remains if we remove the wolf's hunger? If I cut away the mate instinct, would the man still look at you like that? The question found the wound he had aimed for. Tessa thought of Kael's arms around her in the archive. Then she thought of his voice freezing her body. Silas saw the hesitation. He pressed the master control sigil into the hollow center of the copied writ. The chamber shuddered. Moon ink rose from the floor in 12 black lines. Tessa lunged, but Silas had already drawn his high registrar seal across the metal. A new sentence burned into the writ. Status: Command activated. Far above them, the Crown Moon Registry answered. Kael felt it outside the lower door before any signal came. A pulse moved through the stone, carrying royal blood, stolen consent, and something cold that smelled faintly like Tessa without being her. Varric went silent for one heartbeat. Then every branch line in the chamber ignited. Julian cried out as the mark on his wrist pulled toward the name forged on his certificate. Across the northern packs, men and women carrying false moon seals heard the same command inside their bones. Return to the mate written in your seal. Tessa grabbed Julian with one hand and yanked the signal cord with the other. The bell above the lower door rang once. Kael entered before the second ring. He did not come as an army. He came exactly when she had asked him to. Silas stepped backward into a crescent-shaped arch of light. The original writ folded beneath his arm. You are too late to stop the first command, he said. The arch swallowed him. The laboratory lights died. In the dark, Tessa held Julian upright and looked at Kael across the burning black lines on the floor. The anchor was no longer only awake. It had begun to obey. By dawn, the first reports reached the palace. A woman in Northmere had walked out of her sister's house in the middle of breakfast and tried to return to the Alpha whose forged seal had taken her farm. A father in Grey Hollow had handed his daughter to a family he had been fighting in court for months, then collapsed when his own will returned. In Red Vale, 3 guards had locked themselves in a grain house to keep from obeying the names burning under their skin. The forged bonds were no longer quiet documents. They had become commands. Tessa stood in the war room with Julian's blood still dried beneath one fingernail. He had been taken to the infirmary and had objected loudly until someone promised him a mirror and a clean shirt. Kael stood across the table while pack messengers shouted. Families are being split apart. The Harrow Pack demands intervention. Silas Wren has called for Moon Tribunal at dusk. Every word struck Kael, but none cut as sharply as the map spread before him. 12 branch seals burned in black ink across the northern packs, each line running back to the same center. To Tessa. To him. A moon scholar pointed to the copied diagram from Silas's laboratory. Silas holds authority through the master control sigil. The network needs either transfer or collapse. Say it without scholar language, Captain Rowan said. Tessa looked at the hollow circle. Royal claim transfers it. The room quieted. The network used Kael's blood as royal source. Silas could command because his sigil sat inside the master anchor, while Kael's claim remained incomplete. If Kael completed the royal claim, the living royal source would outrank the High Registrar. The command would move to Kael, Tessa said. The scholar nodded. He could freeze the branches. Julian appeared in the doorway, pale but standing, one sleeve bandaged. I dislike when scholars say could while people are being magically dragged across counties. Tessa did not look away from the diagram. Tell me what that makes me. The scholar swallowed. The royal claim completes the bond structure. Since your scent stabilizes the anchor, you become its living counterweight. Kael answered before the scholar could soften it. It binds you to me. The scholar continued carefully. Permanently, under current crown law. His Majesty could locate you through the bond. Alpha Command would likely become stronger because the anchor would treat your compliance as central to stability. Tessa felt the memory of the theater in her muscles. And my emotions? Moon ink may begin filling the absence of bond response with reflected royal resonance. Julian's face tightened. That sounds like making her feel what the paper requires. No one corrected him. Varric rose inside Kael with hunger and fear. Claim her. Save them. Keep her safe. Kael closed his eyes. For one breath, he imagined it. Tessa bound to him. The network frozen. The victims stopped. The council praising his sacrifice. Varric quiet. No more guessing where she was. No more terror when she walked into danger. No more waiting for a choice he could barely survive. All he had to do was take what law, magic, and desperation were already offering. Tessa saw it. You are thinking about it, she said. I am. The honesty hurt more than a lie. Kael opened his eyes. I am thinking about every person being dragged back to a forged mate. I am thinking about the crown collapsing before sunrise. I am thinking about the fact that claiming you would stop the screaming in my wolf. Tessa held herself still. And I am thinking, he continued, that if I do it, the only moment between us that I know was truly yours becomes something I destroyed. The archive floor, her hand placed over his arms around her only after she allowed it. Kael looked toward the council members gathering near the door. No. An elder alpha stepped forward. Your Majesty, 1 Omega cannot outweigh 12 packs. Kael's gaze turned cold. A kingdom that survives by enslaving one woman has already lost itself. She is already your fated mate. She is not my property. The pack laws may not support that distinction. Then the pack laws are wrong. The room shifted, not with agreement, but with danger. The Moon Scholar pointed to another passage in the crown text. There is a second option. Kael already knew he would hate it. If His Majesty cuts the royal blood link from the crown registry, the anchor loses its source. The command weakens. Miss Rowan may be able to sever the forged legal layers during tribunal. At what cost? Tessa asked. Kael answered. The crown rejects me. My alpha authority breaks. Varric may be severed from the crown network. The throne enters vacancy. The packs may try me under the same laws I failed to protect. Tessa turned toward him. And your wolf? Varric pressed against Kael, wild with pain, but beneath the pain there was something clearer. Do not take her. Kael's voice roughened. He would rather lose you than keep a version of you forced to love us. Tessa stepped across the room and took his hand before the council, the scholars, the guards, and every messenger waiting to watch him fall. She still felt no bond, but she felt his fingers tremble once around hers. Before the summons came, Kael left the war room and walked to the western balcony. Tessa followed him. For once, no guards stood close enough to hear them. Below the balcony, the Capitol burned with late lanterns and frightened voices. Somewhere beyond those rooftops, Forged seals were pulling people back toward lives they had never chosen. Kael gripped the stone rail with his injured hand. "If I sever the crown," he said, "Varric may not come back the same." Tessa stood beside him. "Are you telling me so I will stop you?" "No." His voice was rough. "I am telling you because if I lose him, I do not want you to think I blame you." That hurt more than she expected. "You said he would rather lose me than keep a version of me forced to love you." "He would." Kael looked at her then. "So would I. But wanting the right thing does not make the loss painless." Tessa reached for his hand. He looked down first, waiting. She placed her fingers over his. The bond remained silent inside her, but his hand trembled once beneath hers. "I cannot promise what I will feel after tonight," she said. "I am not asking for a promise." "What are you asking for?" "One thing that is yours, before I lose everything else." Tessa's breath caught. He did not move closer. He only waited. So she stepped into him and rested her forehead against his chest. Kael closed his eyes as if the contact wounded and saved him at the same time. His arms lifted, then stopped. "Yes," Tessa whispered. Only then did he hold her. No command, no claim, no moon ink, just a man shaking, because he was about to lose a crown, and a woman who had chosen to stand close before he had nothing left to offer. When she stepped back, his hands opened immediately. That, more than anything, made her want to stay. At sunset, Silas's summons arrived written in silver-black ink. Moon Tribunal would convene beneath the glass dome. The message offered Kael two choices before all pacts: claim Tessa and command the anchor, or sever the crown and stand as king no more. Moon Tribunal had not been opened in Kael's lifetime. The hall beneath the glass dome was built for judgments too dangerous for closed rooms. Moonlight fell across 12 pack banners, the central registry altar, and the people whose forged seals still burned beneath their skin. Tessa entered without a witness seal and without a title. Whispers followed her. Bond-null. Null anchor. Forged queen. Kael walked beside her wearing the moon crown, but he did not touch her or guide her forward. Since the theater, every inch of space he did not take had become a promise he still had to earn. Silas Wren stood at the altar in formal silver robes. The original dormant royal betrothal writ lay open before him, the master control sigil pulsing at its center. "You are late, Your Majesty," Silas said. "You are under arrest," Kael replied. "For obeying the law?" Silas turned to the gathered packs. "The king refuses the bond that could save his people. 12 branch seals are in distress because he values one bond, Null Omega, above the stability of the realm." A woman near the red veil banner cried out as the false mark on her wrist flared. Her husband held her while her body fought to move toward another man. Silas lifted the writ. "Complete the royal claim. Command passes to you. Freeze the branches. Save them. Take your queen." Varric surged inside Kael with pain and hunger. "Claim her. Save them. Keep her." Kael stepped forward. "Before I choose, the crown will hear what it has done." He unfolded a paper from inside his coat. "I signed the Crownmate Priority Act 5 years ago. I signed it to stop a war. I trusted a summary. I ignored the appendix. That law allowed royal witnessed moon seals to override appeal." The hall went still. Kael began reading names. Elin Voss, Mara Thane, Ludia Gray, Halayan Mar. Names became faces. Some stood in the hall. Some had sent testimony. Some had died before anyone listened. When he finished, Kael placed the paper on the altar. "Silas Wren built this crime, but I built the legal door he used. I do not claim ignorance as innocence. I renounce royal immunity in every forced bond case touched by my law. The crown may be sued. I may be judged. An elder alpha struck his staff against the floor. This is not the time for confession. It is exactly the time, Kael said. If I use that same law to claim Tessa Rowan, then every apology becomes another lie. Silas pressed his palm to the master control's sigil. The writ flared. 12 black lines burned across the floor toward the altar. The victims cried out. Tessa staggered as the anchor reached for the scent Silas had stolen from her childhood. Kael nearly fell. Through the writ, Varric felt Tessa being pulled away and offered to him at the same time. It was torture shaped like temptation. Claim her, the anchor whispered through blood and law. Kael looked at Tessa. She was pale, afraid, still standing. She did not ask him to save her by owning her. Kael removed the moon crown. A shocked sound moved through the tribunal. Captain Rowan's voice broke. Your Majesty. Kael placed the crown on the altar beside the writ. No crown is worth the right to command her heart. Silas's calm finally cracked. Do not. Kael took the ceremonial blade and cut his palm. Royal blood spilled across the crown moon registry. I sever my blood from the registry. The glass beneath the writ turned red, then silver, then black. The moon crown cracked with light. Every alpha in the hall recoiled as the ancient pressure of the throne vanished. The instinct to bow disappeared. Kael felt the crown network tear out of him like roots dragged from bone. Varric howled once. Then the wolf went silent. Kael collapsed against the altar, breathing hard, blood dripping from his hand. The crown rolled away from him. The throne was vacant. Silas lunged for the writ, but Tessa was already moving. With Kael's royal source severed, the black lines weakened. For the first time, she could see the forged network clearly. True bonds carried warmth, memory, choice, fear, forgiveness, and life. The forged layers were colder, stolen signatures, preserved scent, legal obedience where consent should have been. Tessa placed both hands on the crown moon registry. The glass burned cold beneath her palms. Silas snarled, You cannot break mate bonds. I am not breaking bonds, Tessa said. I am breaking documents. The dome filled with black lines. 12 branch seals appeared above them, each one connected to the central writ by a vein of stolen authority. Everyone saw it. The victims, the clerks, the alphas who had doubted her. Tessa found Julian's branch first. She pressed her thumb to the line and searched for the memory of choice. There was none. She cut the legal layer. Julian gasped from the witness benches as the mark on his wrist went dark. One by one, Tessa severed the false layers. Elin Voss, Mara Thane, Lydia Gray, Helene Marr. Each name Kael had read became a person released. Silas seized the master control sigil. You are mine to witness. The childhood signature on the writ ignited. Tessa's throat locked. The consent echo he had stolen from her 12-year-old hand rose through the moon ink and tried to shape her voice around one word. Accept. Her body leaned toward the altar. Kael pushed himself upright, but he gave no command. He had none left. He only said her name. Tessa. Not an order. A choice to call, not control. She held on to it. My signature was stolen, she said. My body was studied. My silence was interpreted. But my choice was never yours. Julian appeared at the altar with Rowan supporting him. He threw a leather packet across the registry glass. Scent ledgers, EchoScript tools, blood wax records, her mother's letters. A list of marriages marked by branch number. The evidence scattered under moonlight. Silas reached for the writ. Tessa reached the center first. She pressed her hand over the stolen childhood signature and pulled the consent echo out of the document. The master anchor cracked. The sound was not loud. It was worse than loud. It was the breaking of something everyone had been taught to trust. Across the dome, every black branch burned white and vanished. The victims fell back into themselves. Silas was seized before he could cast another command. For the first time, he looked at Tessa not as a defective Omega, not as a vessel, but as the woman who had seen the lie and survived it. Kael stood opposite her without crown, command, immunity, or throne. The hall waited. He did not reach for her. He did not ask her to stay. Tessa picked up a blank registry sheet from the altar and walked to him. His sleeve was stained with blood, and the silence where Varric had been showed in his eyes. She placed the paper between them. "Now ask me," she said, "when you have no power left to make the answer easier." 14 months after Moon Tribunal, Kael Blackthorne sat in a plain hearing room without a crown and listened to a woman describe how his law had cost her 6 years with her son. No guards stood behind his chair. No alpha pressure filled the room. No royal immunity protected him from her voice. When I begged the Crown Court to reopen the case, they told me the moon seal had already spoken, she said. But the seal was forged. My fear was real. My son was real. Your law treated paper as more important than either of us. Kael bowed his head. You are right. Tessa stood at the back of the room, wearing the silver witness seal restored to her wrist. On the table, before Kael lay the deed for the second royal estate he had sold to fund restitution. It was not enough. Everyone knew that. Some cases were still unresolved. Some pack councils still resisted. Some years could not be returned by law. That was the point. His punishment had not ended because he was tired of paying it. That night, before the conclave vote, Kael came to the Royal Registry. Not the throne room, not the council hall, the registry. Tessa was alone at her desk, reviewing the final consent charter. The old room had changed. Silas's portrait was gone. The medical archives now required 3 independent keys. A public notice on the wall said a person's current refusal outweighed any old seal, old signature, or old witness. Kael stopped at the threshold. May I come in? Tessa looked up. You learned that question eventually. I had a strict teacher. She sounds tired. She was right. He entered only after she nodded. For a while, neither of them spoke. Rain tapped against the windows. The room that had humiliated her now carried her handwriting in every corrected form and every new appeal rule. Kael placed one blank sheet on her desk. The conclave may never return the crown, he said. Varric may never be what he was. I may spend the rest of my life paying for a law I signed in ignorance. I am not asking you to wait for a restored king. His voice lowered. I am asking if you will choose me if they never give the crown back. Tessa rested her fingers on the paper. There was still no mate pull, no warmth under her skin, no invisible certainty telling her what answer to give. Only memory, Kael tearing the extension order in half. Kael sitting on the archive floor instead of touching her grief. Kael refusing to claim her when the entire kingdom demanded it. Kael living 14 months without a throne because he would not build peace out of her obedience. I still do not feel the bond, she said. Then I will never ask you to pretend. I may never feel it. Then I will live with that truth. I am not choosing a crown. I do not have one. That almost made her smile. I am choosing the man who had power over me and gave it up. Kael did not move. Tessa crossed the space between them and took his hand. Yes, she said. The word did not shake the melody. It did not summon Moonique. It did not repair the silence inside her. It was still the strongest answer she had ever given. Kael asked before he kissed her. She answered by pulling him down herself. The next day, the Pack Conclave did not restore the old throne. They created a new one. Kael was permitted to begin conditional restoration under the Crown Charter. The registry would remain independent, the restitution fund would continue, the Crown could be sued. The Alpha King could be removed by conclave vote. Consent law would stand above mate law. Several pacts voted against him. Kael accepted their judgment. When the moon crown returned to his hands, it did not feel like a divine excuse anymore. It felt like a burden he had to keep earning. Tessa did not become queen through the destroyed writ. She was recognized after the charter was signed because she had broken the master anchor, rebuilt the registry, and written the first law in Northern Pack history stating that no old seal could outweigh a living no. She kept her desk. 3 weeks later, Julian Cross sent a new poster to the registry. In the painting, he stood beneath a silver moon in a dramatic black coat, one hand on a sword and his hair arranged as if several people had suffered for it. Tessa studied it over breakfast. He is still offensively handsome. Across the table, Kael bent the handle of a silver spoon. Tessa looked from the spoon to his face. Is your wolf threatening the theater again? Kael's expression remained solemn. He believes Julian Cross remains a constitutional problem. Tessa laughed, crossed the office, and kissed the Alpha King she had chosen before the crown returned. Then let your queen distract him. The bond remained silent inside Tessa. But Kael had lived 14 months without a crown rather than command her heart. And when she placed her hand in his, no goddess, law, or forged seal had chosen for her.